Hello neighbor, I'm Robert Burns and welcome once again to another edition of Sound Off Louisiana. And I'm sure that everyone has probably been familiar with the phrase, you jumped right out of the frying pan and into the fire. And that would be a perfect description of what happened with former Louisiana State Police Commission Executive Director Kathy Derbonne. Now to give just a little bit of background, I first became involved with recording LSPC meetings in early January of 2017. And I did so because I was being informed that there was all kinds of problems going on, namely investigations for illegal campaign contributions into Governor Edwards' campaign in 2015, and also unconstitutional appointments to that state police commission, all of which had been investigated and looked into and turned over to authorities by the executive director of the commission, Kathy Derbonne. And when I showed up for that January 2017 meeting, I didn't know anybody. I didn't have a clue who was who, what was what on the commission. Now, obviously, almost 2 years later, I have extensively more knowledge. But I found it very interesting that basically the dominating feature on that agenda, and it was stated that way on the agenda, would be a discussion of the professional competence of Ms. Derbonne and whether or not her employment should be continued with the commission. And I'm showing up and I don't know, well, is she a bad person? I mean, I'm just being honest. There was no way for me to know. You know, usually you would hope that when a major state agency such as this put something like that out, there would at least be solid reason to call into question her character, because why else would you have this out there? And I'll just say this, there was a foregone conclusion by all accounts to terminate Ms. Derbonne. In fact, Calvin Braxton, who again we're going to have an updated feature on in the not too distant future about his own litigation. Now his is not against the State Police Commission, this is against the State Troopers Association. He had readily said there were 4 votes. Well, even though I was just showing up for my first meeting, it didn't take a genius to figure out who those 2 votes were, 4 votes were. 2 of them were T.J. Doss, the chairman, and Monica Manzella. They were sort of a tag team. You may recall, in fact, them having been videotaped by none other than yours truly, checking into a hotel shortly after the meeting. Now, clearly, I had some help with that and also was provided the information that they would be there. And so those 2 were gone, but those were 2 of the 4 votes. Another one was Donald Breaux, who was on the commission at the time, and he resigned not very long thereafter. And then the 4th vote was the most interesting one of all, and that being Jared Rickey, who remains on the commission. In fact, of the 4 votes, he is the only one who remains on the State Police Commission. And I didn't know this at the time, but a little bit of background. Franklin Kyle had been a commissioner on the board. Mr. Kyle and Mr. Rickey serve on the board of directors of the same bank in the Covington area. And Mr. Kyle did not go willingly from that commission with regard to the illegal campaign contributions. And he was shortly thereafter replaced by Mr. Rickey, a good friend of his who sits on the same board of that bank. You know, arguably, Mr. Rickey came on there on a mission to get rid of Ms. Derbonne. And anyway, Calvin Braxton said they had those 4 votes, which is very interesting because when they cast the votes, once it had been established that Mr. Rickey's vote wasn't needed, and I would submit to you that it wasn't needed because Euless Simeon, the current chairman, said, I mean, he had told Kathy, look, there's nothing you're going to be able to do. They got the 4 votes. But Mr. Simeon said, well, I mean, if this is really what she wants to do, I mean, she was thrown into a room and they crafted a quick little resignation letter, you know, and she basically signed it under basically threat that, you know, we will destroy you, your reputation, and so forth. So Mr. Ricky changed his vote to no once it was no longer relevant, once his vote was no longer relevant, which gave one of my viewers a very false and deceptive opinion. When she saw the video, she said, well, at least she had one person in her corner that last vote. She didn't even know Ricky's name, but I had to explain to her that things are not always as they appear. But we're going to break away for just a few moments, and we're going to let you see just how hotly contested Miss Derbonne's resignation was. We're going to give you about a 2-minute clip of the most hostile exchange that I've encountered on that State Police Commission between Jared Rickey, the gentleman I just mentioned to you, and Lloyd Grafton. Let's break away.
Don't sit down there and insinuate I'm trying to put the best face on something when I've gone above and beyond to have meetings with this young lady to get to the bottom of this. What have you done other than pontificate for the press?
What have I done?
Yeah.
I've tried to keep some integrity in this commission, and there is none.
Oh, well.
There is none.
Yeah, nobody has character on this commission but you,
sir. You came on this board and you came on it with an agenda. That agenda was fulfilled last meeting when Kathy Dearborn resigned from this commission because of the harassment and the crap that she was having to put up with since a state trooper was TDY'd to Baton Rouge to hang around her office every day and to find fault with her. And in fact, he said it at a public meeting. He was going to get rid of Kathy Dearborn, and he even made comments about me. Troopers who were at that meeting filed a grievance, or at least they wrote a letter to the legal counsel here, or to the commission, saying, here's what the man said at the meeting. He followed through with that. He lived up to my low expectations of him, and he managed to have this commission stuffed with people who want to endear themselves with state police management.
Why don't you listen to the tape and listen to what it was said? I'm the one that asked the question. I know the intent of my question. And for you to sit up here and act like you're holier than thou, the only one with any integrity and character, is insulting to everyone else sitting here.
I may not be the only one with integrity and character, but I'm the only one who's showing any.
Why? By misquoting what was said after you were sent the audio recording?
When you attack and destroy a young woman's reputation...
I'm sitting here having a conversation about storms.
Low life. And anybody that joined into that lynching of Kathy Dearborn has no character, and I'll stand by it.
Last I checked, she resigned.
She resigned because she was told she was going to be fired.
How is that? How is that? How is she told she's going to be fired when the case wasn't even put on?
Mouth and telling her she was going to be fired.
Last time I checked, there's 7 votes up here. Not one.
Why don't you say who made that statement that she would get fired? I want you to say it.
That will come out.
I want you to say it.
That will come
now.
Out.
Say it now.
I'm telling you.
You bring up a lot of stuff, Mark. You have nothing to back it up with. You bring stuff here, you call state police crooked, and you have no documentation.
Not state police.
You did.
People in the state police, particularly management, yes.
Say management, don't say state police.
Dishonest.
Alrighty, so you're starting to get an idea of how tumultuous the exit of Miss Derbonne was from that State Police Commission in January of 2017. Well, as I said, she kind of jumped from the frying pan straight into the fire. And what I mean by that is, on July the 31st, I believe it was, Miss Derbonne was hired at the city of Gonzales to replace a retiring gentleman named Stafford, that she would be the clerk, the chief administrator, and so forth. About 45 days later, the city of Gonzales was looking at giving an across-the-board 2% pay raise to all of its employees, and Ms. Derbonne was going over spreadsheets to get all of this ready and whatnot, and she uncovered some discrepancies in that some employees were going to be getting far larger than a 2% raise, and part of the reason for that is because the spreadsheet did not accurately reflect what their base salary was. And so she went to the mayor of Gonzales, Mr. Arsenault, Barney Arsenault, and said, look, we got some discrepancies here. And Mr. Arsenault, somewhat bizarrely, said, I tell you what, let's go discuss this where we can have a little privacy. And so he had her go to his pickup truck. Now, I'm just reporting the facts as they are in the pleadings. They are what they are. And so Ms. Derbonne alleges that Mr. Arsenault had her go to his pickup truck and ostensibly to discuss these discrepancies in the numbers. And I'm sure you've seen the headline of the feature, and we'll get straight to the meat of it. Miss Derbonne, in her pleading, says that she informed Mr. Arsenault that this was a very uncomfortable situation for her, and that she did not want to, and I want to make sure we get this correct, because that's the part of the lawsuit we will blow up and have available for you right beneath this video. She did not want to be accused of having an affair, as she was informed another high-ranking employee and female staff member had. Arsenault then commented, quote, "I'd be okay with that." Say that again. Arsenault then commented, "I'd be okay with that," meaning that he would be fine with Miss Derbonne having the reputation for having an affair with Mr. Arsenault. Again, I'm just taking what's in the pleadings. I'm sure Mr. Arsenault may have a different account. We'll be following this litigation and see how it all plays out. But at any rate, after this little encounter in the pickup truck, where Mr. Arsenault said they'd have a little more privacy, Mr. Arsenault came in and said he was gone for the day. This was on Friday, September the 15th, 45 days after Miss Derbonne has been hired. And so Miss Derbonne immediately went on to a young lady named Miss Williams, Tammy Williams, because she was what's labeled a human resources generalist. And she said, "Look, I was very uncomfortable with this situation I just had in this gentleman's pickup," the gentleman being Mr. Arsenault, Gonzales Mayor, Barney Arsenault. And the pleading then says that that she and Miss Williams discussed the settlement of a sexual harassment claim previous and general morale within the office. And so now we're going into the weekend. That was Friday, September the 15th, 2017. And on Monday, the 17th, the pleadings state that Mr. Arsenault had Miss Derbonne come into his office, and he then demanded to know how she knew about the referenced affair, and how did she know the details regarding the settlement claim involving the matter, and what else she may know. And Derbonne said that, "Well, I knew all of this because I got the information from Mr. Stafford." Remember, that's the one that there was a transition and she was to ultimately replace. And I was provided with the files and the nature of the settlement and the amount of the settlement. So that's how I knew about this previous affair involving a high-ranking City of Gonzales employee and another female employee. Now, it says that the next day, on the 19th of September, which would be a Tuesday, it said that Mr. Arsenault called her into a meeting and said, "Look, things just aren't working out. You've got an unwillingness to perform your duties, and you're discourteous toward others." Now, who knows what those duties may be? You just never know what those duties may be, but at any rate, the pleadings say that there was an unwillingness to perform those duties, and during that meeting, Councilman Neil Bork and Arsenault both told petitioner that she was not a good fit, that the mayor was not comfortable working with her, and she is the new, quote, girl on the block, and that the other ladies are not comfortable with her, and that the mayor did not like the way that she acted or the way that she interacted with certain people. So that forms the basis of Miss Derbonne's lawsuit. It further down in the litigation, it says that on August the 21st of 2018, she got approval from the EEOC to file the lawsuit that we are providing to you. So I guess you would agree with me that that was a situation of literally jumping out of the frying pan into the fire. We'll be curious to see how the City of Gonzales ever answers this lawsuit, particularly as to it relates to Mayor Arsenault, as to what his take on this whole situation may be about him having allegedly said, "I'd be okay with you getting the reputation of having an affair." with me. Like I said, that's just what the pleadings say. I just report the facts. It'll be up to a judge or jury to ascertain whether this situation is going to warrant damages with Miss Derbonne. But like I said, there can be little question that she most certainly jumped out of the frying pan and straight into the fire. But we'll, through our camera and through the coverage of Sound Off Louisiana, we will let you know the ultimate disposition of this most latest litigation on the part of Kathy Derbonne. This is Robert Burns saying thank you so much for tuning in. We look forward to bringing you another Sound Off Louisiana feature in the very near future. Thank you so much.